What's up, guys? Steven Spikes at the Spike Signal here, and today I'm going to be talking to y'all about Momentary Bliss by Soilwork, the music theory that goes into it to make it sound so sick and so freaking awesome and unified. That's coming up right now here on the Spike Signal. So Momentary Bliss is a particular awesome song because while there is so much happening in it, it is so consistent and so put together amongst all of it that it's just awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. Let's go ahead and talk about the very first part of the song. I'm going to play it for you guys right now. Man, I swear the last part of that song sounds like fucking angels coming down from heaven, man, doesn't it? It's so freaking sick. All right. So starting off with the chords that are implied by what's going on here by the power chords being played. So first of all, it's worth saying that this song in its entirety is actually in B minor. They are playing in a B tuning, and it's freaking intense. So the whole song is in B minor with the lowest string being the main sort of tonic, the one and everything. So very, very awesome there. So we're going to see a lot of really low stuff happening here. So the song, basically the first chord started on the 1, moves then to the flat 3, goes back for the 1 for just a second, then goes to the flat 6. So right off the bat, you have kind of very upbeat, very positive sounding stuff going on from hitting that flat 3 for a moment, then jumping right to the flat 6, or to Lydian. Then goes to the 1 and hangs out on the flat 7. Sort of in Mixolydian, if you would, hangs out there and just gives a lot of sort of kind of lift and ethereal quality to it as the higher lead lines are going. So that's kind of what's going on here. That's the chord progression that we're following. I'm actually going to go ahead and hide a couple things here so we can go ahead and see really clearly what's happening here. So as we go ahead and get into the lead line, so as soon as the drum line goes, along with the rhythm, the lead lines go. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the lower end of the lead lines first. What the lead line is essentially doing, this entire part, are playing chord tones to the chords being played down below by the rhythm guitar. I just noted a few here. I didn't go through all of them, but you can see that you have a 5, a 3, and a 1 of the chord B minor being played right down here, making everything sound very cohesive, put together, and really kind of gluing stuff together, just as you would hear from the song being so like put together and so consistent sounding. And all throughout, even as the chords change, there's still like sort of chord tone soloing type things going on. So yeah, good stuff right there. The other lead line, because there's actually 3 guitars to this part, or 3 written parts anyways. There's the rhythm guitar, there's the bass obviously underneath everything. Then there's the first lead line, which are the chord tones that we just talked about right here. Then there's the second lead line, which are harmonized thirds to the tones in the first lead line right here. So you're essentially kind of building these very cohesive chords across multiple guitars in a way that allow you to have a lot of stuff going on, but still make the song sound very put together and very unified without a lot of kind of unhinged craziness going on. This is actually in sharp contrast to the video that I just did on Children of Bodom. Their style is very different. They'll pull things in from all over the place. They do use chord tone. Sometimes, of course, everyone does, but they'll pull in a lot of even non-tight diatonic stuff to get a really kind of unhinged and crazy sound to things. And this is pretty much the exact opposite of that, staying very well within the chord, maybe deviating occasionally, but really, really staying within that to give a lot of cool texture to things. So let's go ahead and move on from there now. Let me zoom out some so we can see what's going on. So we have essentially a similar thing going on right here as we get to the sort of last part of the main riff, if you would. I'll go a few measures back. We basically hang on that A, we hang on that flat 7, and we go ahead and we have a lot of chord tone stuff going on, but also some non-chord tone things too. We have some 2s here, we have a 6 here and everything. And the interesting thing here is that between the 2 lead lines, here we actually do get a little bit out of the chord tone soloing. Between the 2 lead lines, we actually have different things happening outside of just harmonizations to thirds. So for example, right here, we have a D, and here we have right above it an E. So we basically have kind of a second harmony right there. And by second, I mean like the second interval harmony right there. Here we have a 4th, right from here to here. Right here, we have a 4th as well. So kind of some interesting stuff going on here. This section, it's not all harmonizations to thirds. And like I said before, it does kind of break out of the chord tone soloing thing here. The interesting thing is it still sounds so unified and so well put together just because of the notes being played and being used. So very great songwriting here. Absolutely phenomenal. Being able to implement stuff like this, of this complexity, while still having it sound so put together is definitely a big goal of mine when it comes to songwriting, so I'm really happy to be looking at this. Let's go ahead and finish this thing in this main riff out. Okay, so then it goes again. Same chords, same everything. Okay, so then we get into the first verse. Now, the first verse mostly has some screaming, has some singing. We'll talk about the singing as it comes up too. A lot of the stuff going on in this very, very first part are just simple octave changes as strummed by very quick eighth notes. Very quick primarily because the song's at fucking 2:45, man. That's fast, dude. That's fucking fast. And I thought Colma songs were fast. Like, this shit is intense. So let's go ahead and listen to it. Nothing going on in the lead line, as you can see. that jazzy saxophone is the frickin' vocals right there, so that's what that is. Okay, so let's take it back and look at what's going on here. So, just looking at the rhythm guitar, it's only one being played. There's actually 2 here, but there's only one sort of separate thing going on because they're playing the same thing. Looking at the lead, at the rhythm guitar lines, these are both, they should be identical. They are hanging out on the B notes, playing octaves of it. We have the 0 and we have the 12 right here. Very simple. What they then do, interpreting all of this kind of from the perspective of B minor, which I will for right now. I view kind of all of this as being a function of that. They do a little bit of quick higher note harmonization. Very kind of much sort of like a arpeggiation type thing going on here. Playing a lot of notes from B minor. You have the 5, you have the 1, you have the main extension, the flat 7 and everything, ending out on the 1. Then essentially going back and doing some arpeggiations going down with pull-offs, ending right on the B. So pretty much you have an entire verse line strictly sticking around the B chord, played at like every variation you could imagine in a bunch of cool ways to give tons and tons of punch and intensity to the song, all sticking around the beat. Very cool stuff right here. It's very minimalistic while at the same time very, very intricate. So super cool stuff. Go ahead and start it from right here. Okay. So then we have Bjorn's vocals come in. Let's go ahead and listen to that whole part and focus on the vocals. Okay, so these first 2 verses right here, first several verses before his voice comes in, those are all still in B, or have an implied B minor chord underneath that I'm interpreting. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the vocals from that standpoint real quick right here. So. So he starts on a 1 himself. He kind of ascends through things. Then the very kind of powerful, intense note that's also on the 1, just a higher up. So he basically ascends vocally an octave and then kind of slides down to a 4. Still kind of hangs out on that 4 as he begins the next few line, where the expendable souls go. And then ends out on the 3. So he's not ending out on the 1. He's still leaving some hanging sort of desire to have more lyrics come in, to have more stuff come in to kind of conclude things out. And that's good. You want that push moving on to the next part of the song. You want that motivation to go on and keep listening to hear how it all resolves. So let's go back up for a moment and get back to the guitars, because at this point right here, beforehand, and the where the expendable souls go part, the chord actually changes to a flat 6. So again, you have kind of more arpeggiation type stuff going on here based around the G, which is the flat 6 of B minor. Again, all very, very within itself, all very, very within a general sort of feeling or general sort of idea. We have a change once again, and it starts over. And at this part in the song, it's all screaming, so we don't have that noted here. But you do see that right here. Actually, as in the first part of this verse as well, you go from the G to the E minor, which is the 2. Or not the 2 or the 4. It'd be the 2 if it was in major, but it's not. It's the 4 and everything. And you again kind of have a lot of sort of notes following off of that. You have the 5, you have the 1, you have some outside of E minor notes in here as well, like the 6, but you have a lot of stuff within it too. So cool stuff right there. Going to the 2 is kind of a cool choice right here. I have seen several places, and I'm a little not totally positive about how this works like historically and everything, but a lot of similarities between the 4 and the 2 from a major perspective I'm talking now. And obviously part of that's evident. They share several of the same notes and stuff like that. But going to the 2 gives you a kind of a desire for things to carry on. It's not like going to the 1 or going to the 6, if again from the major perspective. But it does give kind of like a desire for things to move on, while at the same time not like absolutely demanding a resolution, you know? It's not absolutely demanding like you get back to the 1 like you would be if you end out and you hold on the 7 for a little bit. So it's kind of like a chill, sort of like almost like relaxed place to get to and everything like that. This, from the minor perspective, this 4 right here, you know, is based the Dorian chord if you want to look at it that way. So pretty cool right here. Really gives kind of a relaxed feeling to things. Okay, so then we get back to the B minor. Then we have some percussive, very powerful, very percussive parts come in before getting to the absolutely ethereal chorus line with some really, really good stuff happening here. So let's listen to the whole thing. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the chorus. So as you can see right here, we have a lot of kind of movement happening in the chorus. I didn't notate absolutely everything because there is some repetition between them and such, but I laid down like some of the important things that we'll need to be looking at, need to be thinking about if we're going to analyze this chorus. So we start kind of moving into the chorus. There's 2 bars that we take to jump up in there. And those movements go from B minor to A, the flat 7, to the F sharp minor, the 5, I'm sorry, to the D, which is the flat 3, and finally back to the E, which is once again the 2 moving into the chorus proper. So, along with that, we have some octave chords doing some pretty cool things, some kind of, you know, stereotypical things and some not so much. So, if you'll look right here, we have essentially octave chords kind of playing contrary to what the lead or the rhythmic line is doing right here. They are essentially playing up, so we have a 1. So then we move down to an A right here, and the octave chords actually move up to their 3rd, to the C. In fact, that should actually be a 3 right there. That's the, you know, kind of extension that's being applied based off the chord, because you move from harmonies where you have both doing the same, having the same tonic, to a harmony where you have the power chords and the octave's playing the third of the root of those power chords. Then a situation where you have an F sharp minor with the flat six being played on top of that. And then finally, you have the D, which is the flat 3, the major note, the major chord, if you would, having the fifth of the D being played right here. So again, nothing overly complex, but the implementation of all of it, the ingredients are quite simple. The way they're put together gives you one hell of a freaking outcome, though. So that's we'll see that all over the song. Soilwork are absolute masters of that. So let's go ahead, now that we've kind of gotten that like very, very pre-chorus out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into the chorus itself. We'll see the same things happen. And then repeats. So I'm not going to go over every single like solitary thing here, but suffice it to say, you can see that the same sort of thing is being applied. I'm going to zoom in some though. You can see the same sort of thing is happening here. We have a B minor, we have the 1 being played along with the B minor, and basically any chord you see here has the corresponding sort of extension, whether it be the third or the flat 6 extension or the second, the 2 as an extension, being played along underneath the chord, or over top actually the chord playing. So you can just take a look at that. It gives a lot of really good ideas for what we can think about using when it comes to writing songs. I mean, it's so easy to just play the third of an octave chord along on top of the chord being played underneath, but really mixing it up can provide some really cool results, especially if you mix things up in a fashion like all at one time, going from something like the 1, 3, flat 6, 5, 3. I mean, that is very, very unique right there in the amount of octave chords that they're using and how they're being played on top of the lower and eighth chords. So very, very cool there. So just going to scroll over a little bit so you can see more of what's going on here. Again, not going to go over every single little bit and verbally say it, but you can see it here if you want to take a look at any particular part that's happening. I'll go ahead and play it one more time too, just so you can hear it in action. And then it repeats at this part. So cool stuff right there. Now, one thing I do want to spend just a little bit more time on are the vocals. So let's get down to them. I'm going to play it back a little bit. Okay. So following along with the corresponding chords up top, and what I'm going to do here is actually hide pretty much everything that aren't the chords themselves, so that way we can very clearly see how the chords are following along with the vocals. So essentially from the E minor to the F sharp minor to the G and so on, we have the vocals playing very, very closely to everything that's going on. We have an occasional 7, 4, flat 6 in there and stuff, but overall you have a lot of similarities with the chord tones following the chords being played, the chord tones of the vocals. At the same time, though, it's not like you're literally having him follow along with the chords on the tonic of the chords. He's not literally singing, an E here or an F sharp there or an A there or anything. He's playing around, even when he is using the chord tones, he's playing around within those chord tones, just again, to get a really, really powerful and, feel of a vocal that like follows along, but not too closely and everything. I'd almost maybe like think of it like, if in fact he had the guitars come to him and then put vocals over them, which I'm guessing is what happened. I'm not positive, but I'm only guessing that happened. He might even look at it in a manner where he's like, all right, here's kind of my most likely options for things to sound good, like following along with the chords themselves, like obviously. That might sound too similar though. So he might then think, okay, well, how does the third sound over this chord? How does the fifth sound over this chord? And they might sound good, and he might sing those at points like here, or even the 1 at a certain point too. But then if those still aren't quite hitting it, he might then kind of go to extensions and everything. So it's a really good structure. It doesn't mean you have to stay within the chord tones at all, not for a moment, but it's a really good kind of, this is probably most likely to sound good and most likely to sound like something I want. if you want to stay diatonic, that is. Whereas these other things could also sound good, maybe not quite as likely. Then there's some other stuff down here that would sound good, but maybe like a little bit off from the chords. And being able to draw from each of those separate quadrants, I think, can provide a lot of good stuff in the song. And he did that very, very good here, man. And just what a vocal on top of it is, man. This song has some of my favorite vocals ever in it. Like, Bjorn's a fucking badass singer. And man, just happy to hear him sing anything, man. Really good stuff. So let's go ahead and continue on. I'll play the whole chorus through one more time, and then we'll go ahead and get on to the next part. All right. Okay, so at this point, the lead line, the main riff and the lead lines continue. We have a quick little thing here from Bjorn, where he sings along with them. Kind of following along closely, but not entirely closely with the chord tones. Again, actually, in this case, he's quite off of it. Has some outside chord tone stuff going on here over top a G chord. Okay, so moving on up here, let's see what we can do next. So we move into the second verse. Now, over the second verse, what we have here are octave chords added throughout the entire duration of it, or at least most of it. So let's go ahead and get into there and see what's going on here. I'm going to once again take out and hide some of the stuff that doesn't quite show us the chords and everything. So here we are. We are in the second verse of the song now. We're on the B minor. And on the B minor, at the moment, for several measures, we have the fifth note of the B minor being played along with it. Moving around somewhat. Again, this is all interpreted from B minor. Now on the fifth of G and the fifth of F sharp minor. So essentially what's going on there is the entire duration of it. Again, if you wanted to interpret all of this as B minor and everything primarily, the entire duration of it, whether it's B minor or any of the subsequent following chords here or here, they're always playing the fifth of the implied chord. Again, very sticking very close to the underlying implications of things, while at the same time providing something a little bit different than just playing the one. You know, it's the fifth, not the one. That can be used to add a lot of excitement and intensity and make things sound consistent without being too samey. So, good stuff right there. Let's go ahead and keep going with it. Then, get into a very intense percussive part, all in the B minor. Same octave chords underneath. The only difference being that it actually never moves from B minor. This entire section right here is all just, it's in the B tuning, it's the lowest note and everything, it's just the B. The percussive part is entirely B, but the octaves, chords, and their movements remain. All right, so yeah, goes on right there and everything. Sounded very good, sounded very cool and everything like that. At this point, lots of things kind of cut out except for the bass and the octave chords. Freaking sick drum fill, man. Freaking awesome. Then it moves on, gives a pick slide, and then we jump right back into the chorus. So this chorus is actually exactly the same, best I can tell, as the prior one, so we'll just go ahead and go through it. I don't have too much to say here other than this section. There is this really cool, really sort of like a cohesive yet chaotic part where you have the sort of rhythmic guitars doing this sort of like cool hammer-on and pull-off action right here. Again, very, 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 very similar. Still based around the B. But along with the drums too, you know, just little flares like that, man, it can make all the difference in a song. You know, we heard the chorus already. The chorus is very, very similar, but you do have something like this thrown in just to give it that little extra hook, that little extra intensity that works really, really well. So super good stuff right here, and that's kind of the main difference there. Let's go ahead and continue on with the second to last chorus. So I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit because this is all similar stuff that we've heard. There's a little bit of variation in the octave chords. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but just wanted to point it out and everything. You return to a B minor right here, and they do some slightly different things compared to it. Nothing like too much to write home about. Just wanted to point it out right here and right here. So let's go ahead. Okay, so then it gets into the sort of interlude part. All right, so now what they do here is the first thing, just to kind of hold up everything, make it sound like a little bit ominous and intense, is they go ahead and they employ a C natural. Now, in the key of B minor, the C natural is not in there. It's a C sharp and everything, and that's the 2. So the first thing they do is basically play a note a half step up from the B, which is C minor. And based off of that C minor, you know, they just play a couple things up top here. If you're looking at them from the perspective of C minor, not even like necessarily like the chord C minor, but just the C note itself, you have a 7, a flat 6, and a 1. So it's arguably like kind of jumping to C minor for just a moment. But very quickly after that, going to a D, to an A, kind of almost like returning to B minor, if you would, before jumping right back into B minor. So just a quick little cool thing, you know, and if you had a guitar in your hands, it'd be a very quick thing to like, oh, what's an ominous way to like stop this? Just go a half step up from the tonic and play some notes based around that, and you have it right there. So moving on into the interlude. All percussive, all to B. Throws a pick slide in there. Okay, so now this part gets pretty interesting. We have part of the lead line from the main riff return, and it's also once again kind of harmonized together. And despite the lead or the rhythmic line changing here and using some different chords, there's still very much chord tone soloing overall. When it comes to being considered just B minor and everything. I didn't quite get into how everything exactly lines up with, you know, this A right here or this B or anything like that. But just since these are Bs as well and everything, and all of these notes right here as well are Bs too, and more or less is reasonable to consider it all still sort of being implied by a B minor chord. So I just kind of interpret this as such. These are mostly chord tones right here, and these are mostly third harmonies based on those chord tones. So I'm just going to continue on with it right here. Very beautiful, yet kind of intense. And we're going to get into the solo. So now it ascends right here, you know, very cool, very intense, goes from the 1 to the flat 7 to the 2 to the 5 and continues from there. One thing I wanted to point out here, now this solo is really cool. There's actually not like much speed going on with it, but what it doesn't have in speed, it more than makes up for in just having interesting harmonies. So if you look right here at the very first part, and I'll play it again. So you can think of these, honestly, as inverted harmonies. So this, for example, right here would be the B. This right here is the D. This is essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes away from the B. So you can think of it as kind of a harmony that involves a 6th, or simply think of it as a third that's inverted. You know what I'm saying? So essentially what you have here are, you know, kind of, again, simple stuff. Like it's kind of like third harmonies, but they're not. They're inverted. They're actually 6th harmonies, and they sound really cool over top what's going on here. And all these are like that. At least I believe they're all like that. Yep, yeah, they all have stuff like that going on here. Okay. So we're going to continue on here. We're going to take a quick look at what chords are doing. Now, these chords are basically just playing E's right here. And you have, at this point, some harmonized fifths going on in this section, which is, again, very cool, very different, very unique and interesting. And those harmonized fifths would be here, more harmonized sixths here, more harmonized sixths here. Got a lot of harmonized sixths / inverted thirds here. This right here is actually more harmonized sixth. I'm just looking at some of these things. You know, I notated like a lot of them. Like most of these notations should be right. There might be one or two that's off, like a couple places. But more or less, this should be correct if you want to look at it. And, you know, even just looking at it right now, you can tell that's a sixth and everything. That's a sixth. I mean, it comes up over and over again. So this whole solo is kind of based around this idea about harmonizing sixths together, which are essentially harmonized thirds, instead of the thirds themselves, just to give a different sound and a different feel to it. And I gotta say, it really works well. Okay. So now, at this part, so these are harmonized thirds right here, based off of the chord being applied, which is B minor. Once again, you have the accidentals, or not the accidentals, the extensions or tones that are being implied from there. Got a lot of, basically, once again, chord tone soloing in this part. This section actually is the exact same idea that the main riff uses. You have a B minor chord being played. You have a series of notes that are basically within that chord, with the exception of the flat 7, and then you harmonize on top of those notes that are being played within that chord, notes on top of those notes, so you know you have basically a stack of chords that all line up and sound very good together. And then it ends on a, basically, once again, a 6, just a 6 coming up all the time there, giving a very cool and unique texture to the song. Very, very good stuff. So let's go ahead and play it out and see what else we have to say about it. Once again, you have kind of the crazy intense part. Then it goes right back into the main riff. Bjorn says his little bit right there. And then it just ends in more octaves. And that's it. That's the song, man. Very, very good stuff. Main takeaways from it. You can have an insanely complicated song and technical song if even within a few chords or a few ideas, you use all kinds of variation that is available to you. For example, instead of using simply like harmonized thirds, if you want to have it harmonized lines, use a harmonized sixth instead. That'll give you a lot of mileage on things. If you want have a fairly basic chord progression, but you want to build in all this kind of insane, awesome lead line insanity over top of that, go ahead and stay with mostly, not completely, but mostly within those chords and play lines on top of that and stack on top of those solo lines that are basically a third higher than everything, or on occasion a second or a fourth higher, as we saw sometimes in the lead line as well. So this song has just a constant use of that. It's really, really good. I think some of my favorite kinds of melodic death metal actually does stuff like this. It has ideas that themselves aren't like super numerous. It doesn't use like 20 ideas and throw everything there. It has a few awesome ideas that they use to their absolute maximum extent and have awesome outcomes because of it. So good stuff right there with that. Guys, if you like this and got through this video, I appreciate you taking the time. Do all that shit the YouTube algorithm likes if you want to, but if not, that's totally cool. One thing I would ask you to do, if you wouldn't mind though, would be to go check out my new song that just came out on Spotify. It's called Telestial Fray. To find it, all you have to do is type in Spike Signal in Spotify, like you see it right here on YouTube. And if you want to let me know what you think of it, I'd appreciate that, or just take a listen to it. That'd be awesome as well. So if you like what you saw here, please go ahead and keep it right here at the Spike Signal to see more.